All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for those of you who are able to jump on and hear a presentation today on the upcoming enacted New York State budget. With us today, we have Carly Norton. She is the Southern Tier Regional Representative for Governor Hochul. She has been in this position for 3 years. And before that, she worked for 8 years. She worked for 10 years in economic development. Carly represents the 8 counties in the Southern Tier region. We work with her very closely here at Commerce Shenango. She's been a huge help and advocate, right? You know, we hit the ground running when COVID happened a couple of years ago, and Carly was a great partner to us here in Shenango County, and I know throughout the region. So very happy to have her with us today. And I'm going to turn the program over to her. Just so you know, we will do questions in the chat. I'm going to monitor those questions, and I'll go ahead and give them to Carly at the end of the presentation. But go ahead and feel free to send any questions through the chat, and we'll get to them. So thank you very much, Carly.
Great, thank you, Carrie. Thanks for the intro, and thank you all for joining this morning. I hope we were just talking, I know the weather is very gray, so I'll try to make this brief because I don't want to put anybody to sleep. So I will get started here and share my screen somehow. Can you see it? Okay, great. So in her State of the State, Governor Hochul proposed a whole new era for New York, one in which her administration, fellow statewide elected officials, and the legislature are finally working together to deliver for New Yorkers. And we are going to do just that for the Southern Tier as well. What does this mean in terms of local government funding? $25.3 million in general purpose aid to the region's local governments. The budget provides over $91,000 in savings for Southern Tier taxpayers residing in dissolved villages through the Citizen Empowerment Tax Credit Program. The budget continues to provide nearly $200 million in state matching funds to support collaboration between local governments through the County-wide Shared Services Initiative. To date, the Southern Tier has been provided with over $3.5 million in state matching funds and $52.2 million in funding for local roads and bridges in the Southern Tier through the CHIPS program. So even though we have the means to respond to this historic moment with a historic level of resources and funding, we still approach this year's budget with the goal of being both socially responsible and fiscally prudent. And what the governor and the legislature always kept in mind, you have to prepare for rainy days, even when there isn't a cloud in the sky. Next, we're putting more money back into people's pockets. We're not raising taxes, but instead providing tax relief. We're accelerating a $1.2 billion tax cut originally scheduled to take effect between 23 and 25. So more than 146,000 middle-class taxpayers in the Southern Tier get that money sooner, at a time when inflation is robbing them of any gains in income. Compared to last year, a gallon of gas is $1 more and a gallon of milk is 20 cents more. Accelerating this tax cut will help alleviate that very real day-to-day heavier financial burden that so many families are feeling. We're also providing a middle-class property tax rebate to more than 2 million homeowners, projected to total over $2 billion. And we're delivering $250 million in tax credits for small businesses to help them pay for COVID-related expenses, and $100 million in much needed relief to nearly 200,000 small businesses. The budget accelerates the phase in of the middle class tax cut by 2 years, fully implementing the cut beginning tax year 2023 instead of tax year 2025. This is estimated to benefit over 146,000 Southern Tier taxpayers with an average tax cut of $112 in tax year 2023 and $57 in tax year 2024. The budget provides a one-time supplemental payment equal to 25% of the IETC, or non-custodial parent IETC, claimed for tax year 2021, provided the benefit is at least $25. This is estimated to provide nearly 30,000 Southern Tier taxpayers with an average benefit of $194. And it provides a one-time supplemental payment of between 25 and 100% of the ESCC claimed for tax year 2021, provided the benefit is at least $25. This is estimated to provide nearly 43,000 Southern Tier taxpayers with an average benefit of $208. To continue the state's support for our small businesses, the budget includes a refundable tax relief program targeting COVID-19 related expenses for small businesses. The program provides up to $250 million in additional relief to small businesses. Eligible COVID related capital investments, include but are not limited to costs associated with expanding space to accommodate social distancing, HVAC equipment, expenses related to outdoor space expansions, as well as machinery and equipment to facilitate contactless sales. New York's support of its critical agriculture industry is expanded by enhancing 2 existing tax benefits and establishing a new tax credit. Small businesses were hit particularly hard by the pandemic downturn. The budget provides much needed tax relief to these businesses by increasing small business subtraction modification. I'll go more into that if there are specific questions about it. Skip ahead here. The 2023 enacted budget provides unprecedented support to build the education system of the future with $31.5 billion in total school aid for school year 2023, the highest level of state aid ever. The budget represents a year-to-year increase of $2.1 billion, which is 7.2%. It increases foundation aid by $1.5 billion and provides an additional $125 million for full day pre-kindergarten. New York State continues its strong commitment to education by providing additional funding to meet the needs of students, teachers, and schools amid the ongoing challenges resulting from the pandemic. The enacted budget increases school aid in the Southern Tier by $71.5 million, which is a 5.9% increase, including a $49.3 million increase in foundation aid. The budget increases the state's annual investment in high quality pre-kindergarten to $1.1 billion, an increase of $125 million or 13%. With this funding, school districts will be able to provide access to high quality, full day pre-K across the state for approximately 17,500 additional 4-year-old children. We're going to increase operational support for SUNY and CUNY, our engines of social mobility, by $1.6 billion over the next 5 years. SUNY and CUNY capital projects include $1.2 billion for SUNY state-operated campuses, $879 million for CUNY senior colleges, and $102 million for community colleges. And we're investing $150 million into the expansion of the tuition assistance program so it's available for part-time students, which means more students won't have to choose between work and getting their degrees. We'll also make this assistance available to people in prison as part of our Jails to Jobs initiative. And because working parents need all the support they can get, we are increasing our investments in childcare to more than $1 billion. We will make hundreds of thousands more families eligible for childcare subsidies and will invest more in childcare workers. We will continue to invest in downtowns across the state and the region, as we already have in Watkins Glen, Elmira, Ego, and most recently Endicott and Norwich. We have to confront the housing affordability crisis, and one way we'll do that is by advancing a new $25 billion 5-year housing plan to create and preserve 100,000 affordable homes, including 10,000 homes with supportive services for vulnerable populations. The budget includes more than $1 million for the Neighborhood Preservation Program to support community-based, not-for-profit groups that provide housing assistance, community renewal activities, and rental subsidies in the Southern Tier. And it provides rental assistance through the Rural Rental Assistance Program for nearly 700 units of low-income housing for rural tenants in the Southern Tier region. So we can be the most worker-friendly and business-friendly state in the nation with all the different engines of our economy firing on all cylinders. And we will ensure the new businesses we're going to draw to New York will have access to well-trained and educated workforce by making our statewide higher ed system the best in the nation. Now let's talk about how we're going to use the entirety of our $216 billion budget to directly address the immediate needs of New Yorkers. First, we will continue to respond to this pandemic head on by following the science and data and doing whatever it takes to ensure that our recovery is swift and far-reaching. We will also confront the climate crisis with the urgency that is required. The 2023 budget includes $4 billion for the landmark Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act, and the largest ever investment in the Environmental Protection Fund. But we also make investments in our best natural resources, our parks. In the southern tier, this includes funding for the Watkins Glen Century Bridge and tunnel rehabilitation and design for Taganek State Park Bridge and the North-South Rim Trail. We're making the largest ever investment in our state's infrastructure through a $32.8 billion capital plan, which will help us finally make long overdue repairs to our roads and bridges, build new transit options, modernize existing transit hubs, and revitalize communities. We're also making the largest investment in healthcare in state history, $10 billion, because every New Yorker deserves the dignity of having access to quality healthcare, especially during a public health crisis. We will also rebuild our medical facilities, nursing homes, and hospitals, which have been crushed by the pandemic, through a new $1.6 billion capital program to help them make much needed upgrades. We'll invest in local health departments. The enacted budget includes $700,000 in funding to increase the general health work Article 6 base grants for all full and partial service counties in the region. The enacted budget also invests funding for all counties to cover a portion of fringe benefit costs for public health staff through state aid reimbursement, which will help counties increase their staffing levels to meet public health demands. And we will confront the other public health crisis that is taking far too many New Yorkers' lives head on by making a $400 million multi-year investment in opioid and substance abuse addiction services. The budget provides nearly $11 million to support addiction, treatment, recovery, and prevention in the southern tier. This funding will support a myriad of programs, including residential treatment beds, crisis beds, inpatient rehab treatment beds, prevention programs, jail-based treatment, permanent supportive housing, et cetera, et cetera. Named to honor the memory of a veteran who committed suicide, the Joseph P. Dwyer Veteran Peer-to-Peer Service Program offers a non-clinical support model by veterans to veterans struggling with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, suicidal ideations, and/or other mental health challenges. The budget will allocate approximately $885,000 to fund the program within the southern tier. And we're investing in a $50 million grant program to meet the needs of communities most impacted by gun violence by supporting capital investments related to innovative crime reduction strategies. $90 million in new resources to support discovery reform implementation and pretrial services. This includes $65 million in new investments to discovery that ensure public safety, includes system-wide coordination, technology, expanded storage capabilities, and administrative support, and $25 million for pretrial services, alternatives to incarceration services, and reentry programs. These services include reminders and monitoring of court attendance, screenings, and referrals for mental health and substance abuse treatment. $20 million in new funding will support the people and places that have been most impacted by the spike in gun violence. This will allow the deployment of innovative community empowerment and crime reduction programming in high needs areas that will facilitate the repairing and rebuilding of regions victimized by crime involving guns. And we're doubling state police partnerships with local law enforcement. The enacted budget increases state funding for community stabilization units to double the number of partner jurisdictions to 16. The use of community stabilization units where groups of the most experienced state troopers partner with local law enforcement agencies, have proven to be an effective tool in combating community-specific crime problems across the state. CSUs currently exist in 8 jurisdictions, with Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, and Rochester as leading models. This budget makes New York State safer and the criminal justice system more fair by closing loopholes and providing more resources to mental health, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system. Oops. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their community. We will prioritize public safety, starting with a $227 million investment into programs that will reduce gun violence. This includes tripling the investment in the SNUG program, $13.1 million to expand the use of community stabilization units, and $20 million to respond to regional needs in the aftermath of gun violence. As Governor Hochul has said since day one, her top priority is to confront this pandemic head on and save lives. But we must also pass a bold agenda that will do more than just help us recover from this crisis. We need to embrace this moment of possibility and use it to change New York's destiny. By rebuilding our healthcare and teacher workforces, providing tax relief to those who need it most, speeding up economic growth and creating good paying middle-class jobs, strengthening our infrastructure and confronting climate change, securing public safety and protecting our communities, and making housing more affordable and ensuring every New Yorker has a house over their head. And by enacting bold reforms that will restore trust in state government, this is an extraordinary time and it must be met with extraordinary solutions. The bottom line is that we will make smart investments to ensure that we not only recover from this pandemic, but emerge from it stronger than ever before. And we're going to do it by making fiscally responsible approaches. We know that the federal funds helping to make this possible will eventually run out, and we're planning for that. As we put our agenda together, the most important question has always been, are recurring revenues aligned with recurring expenses? And the answer, whether we're talking about each individual policy or initiative or about the overall agenda, is yes. One thing we are not doing is creating recurring expenses or new programs we can't pay for. For the first time ever, we have no out year gaps. We will make New York's dreams come true and ensure that it can be realized by every single New Yorker. That concludes the slide deck, but I am free to take any questions and stop sharing. I don't know how to stop.
Thanks, Carly. Can you figure it out? You want me to do it? Yeah, there you go. All right. So we did get one question in the chat, and I appreciate Mayor of Bainbridge, Phil Wade, jumped on. Sorry, a little late. Carly was going to introduce you, but I didn't quite catch her before you jumped on. But thank you for joining. I'm glad that our local officials are taking time to be here. He had a question about the education funding and wanted to know, are the education funding amounts outright allocations, or is it part of a competitive grant program?
I think, well, I don't want to speak out of term. I believe they're outright allocations, but I will definitely look into that. That was from the mayor?
Yes.
That asked that? Okay. I'll look into that, Mayor, and I will get an answer back to you. I will email you or give you a call as soon as I have an answer for that.
I do feel like, I'm just going to put my school board hat on for a second. I do feel like they're outright because I know for the school district I represent, our gap funding is finally full. I don't know if all the schools are at that level, but we're finally at 100%. So I know we got a pretty big bump in my school district this year, but I don't know if that's what they mean in this or if it's something else.
Okay. Yeah, no, I believe the same.
Let's see. And then another question. So the funding that's available for businesses that you talked about, I guess two questions. One, is the DRI competitive program happening again this year? And I also know there was some conversation about, instead of making it 10 million, possibly finding a way to break that up for smaller grants for maybe communities that couldn't utilize $10 million. Do you know if there's still conversation happening around that?
That was the last I knew. That was my understanding, that the program still exists, but it was going to be handled in a different way. That, yeah, we were going to make smaller allocations available for more individual projects rather than the whole downtown. So that I will double check with ESD to make sure that's still on track, that's how that all ended up. But
thank you very much. And I know we have some people on today. Feel free to use the chat, or if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself. We don't have a huge group here, so somebody would like to ask a question of Carly while we have her. Now's the time.
Whoa, this will be the quickest one yet.
I do have a question if you have a minute.
Sure. Dave Fino, sorry, he is one of our aldermen here in Norwich. Sorry, David, just said Dave. Otherwise, we would have introduced you as well.
The 4.2 billion Environmental Bond Act, is that going to be available to municipalities in the form of grants or loans?
That's a good question. You know what? I'm not sure. I apologize. I know that every time I do one of these, it's a lot of let me find out and get back to you. But I will make sure that I have your contact information, and I will find out if that is if that's grant or loans.
Okay, and I realize that'll be a referendum on the ballot in November, and that has to pass first. But again, once it's passed, that's my question, is what the structure would be, because we're undergoing some significant water replacement issues. So, and just my second point, just putting in a plug, going way back to 2008 during the last big recession, state funding for both schools and municipalities were cut significantly because of the reduction in revenue, obviously. Since that time, funding to schools has been pretty much restored, but there's been no increase in AIM funding. There was talk in the budget about increasing AIM funding, but again, we're looking at 2009 levels for AIM funding. And, as you know, inflation is very, very high. We're expecting to have some significant increases in personnel expenses because of that. So again, just my plug for the state to please consider some AIM funding increases in the future.
So noted. I know that's certainly not the first time I have heard that refrain, but I will definitely pass that along. I know how important that was to all municipalities across the board, but especially some of the smaller ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a note from Jessica Moquin. She's the executive director of the Shenango County Historical Society is on. She just wanted to thank you and the governor's staff for all the historic support of the New York State Council of the Arts. She said the Historical Museum has really benefited from the program over the years, and the continued support of arts and culture is really appreciated. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for that note, Jessica. And I still have it on my agenda to come out and visit you in Norwich.
I know. We owe you a visit there. So I had another question too about the childcare. I know in your slide deck, you talked about $7 billion in 4 years to help with childcare. I know you probably didn't know the ins and outs of how this is going to work. I know we're working on a few different projects here in Shenango County. There's a current project we're hoping will get off the ground here in the next couple of months. We've applied for some desert grant funding. But do you know if this is, one, is it support for the creation and support of daycare centers, or is it just for parents' subsidies? And
so, oops, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I know that the subsidies are the big highlight from the, in this presentation. So I will have to look into the additional funding beyond that. I don't know if you've already talked to Emily Badalamenti. She's from the governor's office, and she deals specifically with childcare. So I've had a number of conversations, or I've had a number of situations where I connect her with other folks. So I will definitely put you in contact with her, because she really understands where some of this stuff just kind of goes over my head. She's really, really knowledgeable about all of the programs that are available. So I will put you in contact with her.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's great. I'm really impressed with the number of programs that we're looking to do to support the recovery, continued recovery from COVID, the focus on healthcare. I mean, it's really happy with the package and what we're trying to do for New Yorkers. So I know in Chenango County, we're definitely take advantage of many of those programs. So
yeah, and the CHIPS funding. I am surprised that none of the mayor didn't pick up on that. That one's really exciting for a lot of people to finally patch some of those potholes. So
yeah. Well, actually, he just sent a question. He wanted to know, can you talk more about the increase of DOT funding, and when will that program be open for applications?
Sorry, which program?
DOT funding.
Oh, DOT, like through the CHIPS program? Probably.
Not sure.
Okay. Yeah, again, I will connect with my DOT folks and find out what the ins and outs. I do apologize. I don't know. I'm still trying to digest everything that's in the budget book. Programmatically, I am not as knowledgeable as I should be yet because I've had a couple of weeks now. I should know this stuff better, but I will make sure I know the details of all of the programs, and I will connect individually with everybody that has a question. And Carrie, if you could send my contact information to everyone. So if you have any questions that you think of after this, please shoot me an email, give me a call anytime. I'm always available. Well, except for next weekend. I'm actually going out of town next weekend. but pretty much every other time, or I'll probably answer if it's earlier in the day next weekend too. So.
Well, no, it's good to have feedback and know what people are interested in and talking about. So we appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who took the time this morning to jump on. I know everybody's super busy and we kind of threw this at you quickly. So thank you. And thank you, Carly, for your time. And I'll make sure everybody has your contact information, and just let me know if you have any questions and I'll help filter them to Carly.
Thank you for hosting. Thank you all for joining.